Hi everyone, Martina here. Today I want to share 4 of my favorite watercolor Christmas card ideas. These cards are easy to make even for beginners, and once you're done, you'll be proud to show your family and friends. I'll show you every step I take, so let's get into it. For the first card idea, I'm using a hot press watercolor paper in landscape format. I'll be sharing a quick tutorial on how to paint poinsettias. Poinsettias are the most Christmassy flowers, and they're really easy to paint because you only need to draw one type of leaf shape. I just quickly finished marking some pencil lines for where I want the flowers to be. Now I'm ready to paint them. I'm going to paint the top level of my flower first, and I've already loaded my paintbrush with red paint for the base color. I'm applying it in a medium wet consistency because I'll then be using a second clean brush that I've dipped in water and let dry slightly. And using the pressure of my brush, I'm just going to gently drag the still wet paint outward and complete the petal that way. Here, as I'm working on the second level, you can see a bit more clearly the gradient effect this creates. I actually switched to a different clean brush because I found that this one helps me create a sharper tip for the petals. Overall, I think this technique works really well to add depth to the poinsettias. So I'm just going to continue in this method for the other 2 flowers. Once I have the top level of petals set, it then helps me gauge where I can place the next level of petals. I also have the pencil lines from before for a reference, but I'm just sort of modifying as I go and painting each petal in a slightly different shape each time. I feel like it helps make it look more natural that way. Now that 3 flowers are done, I'm going to go ahead and get the green paint ready and start working on the leaves now. It's going to be applied the same way as the petals. Once again, I've loaded up a second brush with water only so I can use it to pull the more concentrated paint outward.
We can build a snowman, then pretend that he is Parson Brown. He'll say, "Are you married?" We'll say.
Here I am applying some finishing touches, such as adding a few hints of stem to the center of each flower, as well as applying a second layer of paint to some of the leaves that look a little faded. Now the painting is done. For the second card, I'm going to share an easy way to make a snowy Christmas tree. First, I pre-cut a tree outline on a separate cardstock paper, and I'm just temporarily pasting it on top of my card to essentially block out the area that's to be painted. Next, I'm grabbing my brush, loading it up with paint, and I'm going to do a simple blue wash over the paper. About halfway through, and while the paint is still wet, I'm going to mix my brush with a darker blue and continue towards the bottom, making sure to paint as close as possible to all the edges and corners so that I could have a really clean edge to my negative space. Here, the paint has dried, so it's time for the reveal. I used Scotch tape, which is pretty gentle on paper, but I would still recommend doing this part slowly. Alright, I'm happy with this silhouette. I plan to paint portions of the tree later on, so I'm using my pencil to connect the ends together, which will help me separate the 3 sections of the tree. I'm now ready to decorate my tree. You can draw different types of ornaments that you like, and maybe even include some personalized ones. Like if the person you're sending this to lives in New York, you can maybe include a New York City ornament, or something that you feel best represents them. Here, I'm drawing some wavy lines to indicate where I want the snow to be, and this will actually be the portion of the paper that I leave alone. I'm now quickly sketching some lines with a water-soluble pencil, And what I like about it is when I paint over it, it's going to give me that nice subtle texture for where the shadow is. I'm just working my way down from the top with my paintbrush and filling in the areas that I marked off to help give that nice contrast with the snow, which is essentially the negative space. One of my favorite art supplies that I got is this Copic Opaque White. It comes with its own fine brush attached, and it's perfect for applying snow to the background. You can also create the snowy effect using acrylic white paint and Q-tips or a fine brush. So the painting is basically done. I'm just using my pencil to create a clean outline and add some shadows to some of the areas that I feel could use a bit more contrast. Finally, I'm gluing down a star that I had saved, and I think this helps make the tree look that much more festive and playful. Here's the final card. For the third card idea, I'll be sharing how I make a simple but elegant wreath. To start the painting, it helps me when I imagine the circular frame that I will be using to build the wreath out of. I'll start by drawing some lines that will act as guideposts where I will be adding leaves later on. I'm actually drawing the lines directly with a fine paintbrush, but if you're not comfortable doing that, you can always start by sketching with a pencil. I'm done with my guidelines now, and I'm happy with the way that the stems are laid out. And next, I'm going to add the leaves. Here on this first stem, I'm painting leaves that are on the smaller side, but as I go around the wreath, I'm going to alternate between some stems that have thin leaves and some with wider leaves, as well as a couple different shades of green for some variety and interest. This is where you can also give it your own fun twist on the leaf shapes and pine leaves. I'm also not going to be too exact on where I place the leaves because as I'm drawing them, I want to be sure to think about leaving gaps so that I could fill in with pops of red for the holly later on. Next, I'm going to add the holly in the gaps that I left earlier. I'm also going to paint some pine cones and add a few more details to the stem to really fill up that wreath and give it that festive look. It's really up to you how much detail you would like to include in the painting. I really enjoy these types of repetitive painting because it gives me a chance to have a peaceful moment making art, almost like meditation. I just finished painting the last holly and the wreath is now coming together. For the final touch, I decided I'm going to paint the word Merry from Merry Christmas below the wreath. Normally, I get nervous whenever I have to paint words because I'm not a calligrapher, but since this is a pretty short word, I decided to give it a try and hope that my hand doesn't shake too much. I happened to find this beautiful scrapbook paper I have left over, and I think the color works really well for a holiday card, so I'm going to make this part of the card and paste the painting on top of it. Here's the final card. I am going to share one more Christmas card idea that's super easy to make, which is really a combination of craft card and watercolor. We're just going to start by doodling some images of popular holiday icons. There are so many holiday symbols to choose from, and with this card we get to include a lot of them. I'm leaving a bit of space between each image so I have some wiggle room. And because I'll be cutting them out later on, I'm not too worried about the order of images right now. The main thing is making sure I draw them all roughly the same size. So my goal is to draw more than I actually need. In case I don't end up liking one of the images or I made a mistake, I can easily cross it out and try again. So I feel like I have enough icons now. Next step is basically to paint them and then cut them out. So I'll let you enjoy the music for a bit while I finish coloring them in. Here I've started cutting the images into squares. You'll notice that I didn't use a pencil and ruler to measure out and draw the square first. This is intentional because I like the idea of the edges being a bit uneven when they're assembled later on. And so right now I'm just sort of eyeballing it as I go along, cutting it into smaller pieces and doing my best to make sure they are similar in size. Now I am picking out the background using cardstock paper that I have, and I'm just first going to lay out all the images on top of it to see how they look. I've decided on 8 icons for my card, so now I'm going to shuffle them around to see if there's any arrangement I like best. Now that I have the layout I like and I know how much space it takes up, I will go ahead and trim away the rest of the cardstock. I'm just doing one final check on each tile to see if any of them could use a minor trim. After that, we can start gluing them and make the final product.
Christmas tree, have a happy holiday. Everyone dancing merrily in the new old-fashioned way.
One last look at our finished card. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was helpful to get you started on creating your own Christmas cards for that special someone. Thank you so much for watching!